Hello, this is Virtualis the Chess Noob, learning and having fun with chess. Welcome to another episode of Chess Noob Game Reviews, where the focus will be analysing how the game could have been improved. In this game, I played the Ponziani-Steinitz Gambit, and I was doing really well in the opening until I kind of forgot what I had to do next when my opponent opted to play on rather than just resign. And in doing so, I actually lost most of my advantage in the middle game. Let's take a look. So I had the black pieces in this game. The opponent led with Italian, e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, and a bishop to c4. Against Italian, two knights defense, and here my opponent started the fried liver attack. And against the fried liver attack, I always now respond with the Ponziani-Steinitz Gambit. Very commonly, it just takes the fried liver attack players off guard. They decide often to continue the attack anyway, and that is a mistake. As you can see, black is now ahead. Now I've got queen to h4, which gives white a lot of problems because this is a mate in one threat. Here my opponent played g3, which is a blunder, a common response to this attack, but it is a straight up blunder and it's really bad, about -6. Basically, this move will result in the loss of that rook, because after knight captures the pawn, if they capture with, let's say they capture with that pawn, which they're not going to do because it's pinned, straight up take. But if they capture this way, which is usually what happens, we now have queen to e4 with check and a fork of the rook. So either way, the rook is lost. Block with queen, take the rook, and now queen blocks. That's the most common move. Now, at this point, I couldn't quite remember what was the best move. I sort of remembered that maybe that was best, but then I got cold feet. So I thought, oh, look, maybe I'll try to evacuate the queen with check, and maybe I could have an attack on the bishop. And then I thought, oh, hold on, that obviously doesn't work because it's defended by the queen. And as you can see, Stockfish considers this a blunder, as I actually lose a lot of the advantage from -6 to -1.5. Luckily, my opponent didn't so punish me for that. They still wanted to trade queens. I, at this point, sort of remembered, oh, yep, this was probably the right way to go. So check again, and after that shuffle, we trade queens. King, captures the queen. And at this point, I did remember again what I was supposed to do. Goal is to try to get the bishop to this square with check, and to do that, you need to jump forward with d5, which is in fact a brilliant move. So it looks like a sacrifice, but it's a necessary sacrifice and it's a good move. Firstly, it's very, very forcing. Now we open up the diagonal for ourselves, it attacks the bishop, and it disconnects the bishop from the defense of the knight. So if they move the bishop anywhere else, we get to take the knight. So they basically have to take, and then we've got the bishop, we've developed the bishop with check, king moves forward, and again, at this point, I couldn't remember what to do. And actually, I don't think I ever knew what to do. I don't think I ever analyzed the various lines of the Ponziani-Steinitz Gambit beyond this point. This, of course, is still a problem. And I thought, oh, is there some way I could protect that rook? And eventually, I did a sidewards move, so rook to g8, and that's a mistake. It just doesn't work because the knight can jump here with an attack, and that's a double attack. I'm going to end up losing material. The correct move here is knight forward, tactical defense, knight to d4, now attacking that c2 pawn, which of course comes with an absolute fork of the king and rook. That's the best move. I didn't see that. Instead, I make that move over. Now, luckily for me, the opponent also didn't see that double attack. Instead, giving check, yes, they get to take that rook, but I get to take that knight. So effectively, trading a knight for the rook, not too bad, not too bad. So there we go. Here, I do make the sort of forward push with my knight, but it doesn't work anymore. So this attack doesn't work because bishop now takes my pawn and provides a defense for that pawn. I now decide to sort of long castle, get my king out of the center, keep it safe. Interestingly, they develop their sort of knight in this direction, I think to try to provide an extra defender. Here, I decided to jump my knight forward. I saw that that was soft. I will take it. I did. And then with check. And here, it's quite interesting because my opponent and I actually have material balance. Neither of us have more or less material. I'm still slightly ahead, but I did lose sort of that advantage from that move. It's a bit obscure, from -5 to -1.6. And this is because my evaluation advantage is entirely in the position, which makes some of my moves a little bit difficult to find. While for white, all they need to do is to try to develop their pieces. So their disadvantage at the moment is a lack of development. So if I can't find ways to make an attack while preventing their development and they get to develop successfully, we may in fact get back to equality. And in fact, that's what happens. White manages to develop their pieces. King forward, threatening my knight. I'm forced to bring the knight back. And now this excellent developing move, ostensibly pinning the knight to my rook. And here I push my rook forward, thinking to move out of the pin. And you will see we are back to equality. This was apparently a blunder. The best way for me to get out of this problem is, in fact, to sacrifice that rook, because I can take that bishop, they'll have to take that rook, then I take back, and effectively I've traded the rook for the bishop pair. And that's a good trade because I still have my bishop pair, so it's sort of a knight versus knight, but the bishop pair versus the rook, the bishop pair will probably beat the rook in the endgame. So that's the way I should have gone. However, I didn't see it. I made that move instead. They take back, and they bring their bishop back to the king. I sort of threaten the bishop, so a bit of shuffling with their bishop. And here, I do still have an advantage. So we've got material equality. However, their rook hasn't developed. This knight is a bit awkwardly placed on the edge of the board. This bishop is sort of not coordinated with their other pieces. I've got these 3 pawns, and that's my power. These 3 pawns, hand in hand, should be able to march up the board. So that's the goal. I still have the bishop pair, and the bishop pair is often very powerful in the endgame. So I attack the bishop. That bishop sort of moves probably to the wrong place, push a pawn. They attack my bishop, move the bishop back. Again, this king, it's activated in the center of the board. However, with the bishops and the pawns, it gets pushed around. And every time I'm able to push the king around with a check, it's almost as if I gain some tempo. There we are. Again, bishop develop with a check. King now forced all the way back, so forward and back. I'm getting an advantage with movement of my pieces. I now bring my rook across, which places pressure on that bishop, but I'm also behind this pawn, which potentially can march forwards. That's a good move because, moving that bishop now is a discovered check on my king. So I'm going to have to move my king forward, which is what I do. They now move the bishop out here. Probably not the right move, on the edge of the board. It doesn't, control a lot of squares. Stockfish reckoned that going this way, forcing a trade is probably best, getting rid of my bishop pair. Nonetheless, they went this way, and now I found a good move, which is a6. So 2 squares away from the knight, and that now controls these 2 squares, which means this knight has nowhere to go from the edge of the board. If it wants to do anything, it has to wait for one of these pawns to move, or it needs to undevelop all the way back to the back rank. So it's like I've taken that knight out of the game. So that's really good for me. Their bishop, that's a good move, trying to attack one of my pawns. However, rather than trying to defend that pawn, I push. Because if they get to take back, and, happy days. So I push, and here my opponent makes a serious, serious mistake. moving the king forward. I think they were trying to defend, provide extra defenders on this side. They're running out of time, only 5 minutes left. But let's see what happened to the feedback from about -4.5 to -20. And anytime you see Stockfish give something like a -20, there's probably a forced checkmate somewhere. It's just at the level of depth of the engine, it couldn't find it. Why is this move so bad? Well, this now allows my e-pawn to become a passed pawn. And in fact, it's almost impossible for white to stop that pawn from promoting. This bishop controls that diagonal, it's controlling this diagonal, and behind it, I've got my rook. So very, very difficult for white now to prevent promotion. That again comes with check, king forced. Again, it's every time I do a check like that, it's like I get an extra move. Now here, I move my pawn out of that line of attack. The opponent now sees that their knight can jump forward, but it's too late. See that diagonal? Bishop with check. And more than that, potentially, if they block, which they have to, I can take, which is what I do. And if they took back with that pawn, that now comes as a fork of the king and rook, completely winning. Now, my opponent did see that and so opted to try to block the advance of the pawn with the bishop, but that doesn't work because now I can take. This pawn is now close to promotion, and that was a discovered check, so they can't even capture back. King is forced to move, can't come here, can't come here, can't come here, can't come here, forced to go to this square, and now again behind another check. This promotion square is defended by that bishop, so promotion was unavoidable. Now I've got an extra queen, completely winning. Opponent makes one last move with about 6 seconds left. I capture and they time out. But it doesn't matter. Checkmate is in 3 moves. Basically looks something like this. They can try to, attack my pieces, but doesn't matter. Check, king forced to one of these 2 squares. That promotes to another queen. They can block once, but that's the end of the game. Checkmate. Good game. GG. My big takeaway is to not take gambit lines for granted. They do require some study. I hope you enjoyed this video and thanks for watching.